The Italians have long been known for their love of the flashy, their obsession for aesthetic and design above all else. Take Lamborghini, for example. They started making tractors, beautiful tractors, might I add, and then one day they said, "Fanculo, facciamo una macchina." They drank wine, ate what I can only assume was a metric ton of pasta and or pizza and or both, and then they built the Miura, what many refer to as the first supercar. And then there's, of course, Ferrari, Maserati, etc., etc., etc. They love good design, is the point. They like rewriting the rulebook, and the knife we'll go over today is no exception. Again, before we get into the nitty-gritty, a big thanks to Marty, aka Knife Eclectic, here on the interwebs for sending this Italian beauty over to me for review. At any rate, this is the Fox Knives Radius. It's won every design award you've never heard of, and it is undeniably Italian in every single way. Visually, it is very unlike pretty much any knife on the market, and that is mainly thanks to that buck-wild locking and actuation mechanism that some crazy Italian dreamt up one night, drunk on wine. The Radius lock. Now, this knife was designed honestly just to make that lock work, and it shows, but aesthetically speaking, I mean, wow, that sensually sculpted titanium handle, those gently milled and well-finished decorative patterns on both sides, that elegant and clean pocket clip, also milled titanium, but not even close to what I would call deep carry. The gold button on the Radius lock, it's clean, and yet it's somehow exciting. Visually, it's like a Porsche 911, clean and simple, yet you know deep down if you put it in sport mode and mash the gas pedal, it will, without question, rip your fucking face off. Opening this thing up only ups the ante on that aforementioned Italian design language. We are met with this polished, damn near mirror finished belt satin sheep's foot style blade, and I, for one, absolutely love the way this thing looks. I love the way the grind was done. I love the crown spine. I love it all. If it's a Porsche when it's closed, it's a friggin' Pagani Zonda R when it's opened up. Even static, it looks as if it's moving. But great looks alone, a great knife do not make. Moving on to the ergos, choke back, it's nice and gentle in the hand, everything well knocked down, no sharp edges left behind, a touch of texturing aids with grip just ever so slightly. The clip is barely noticeable even in the tightest of grips, and overall in this position, it's alright. But we do not have a finger choil. We do not have any kind of jimping on the handle or the blade spine. We do not have much of anything we come to expect from a really high-end EDC pocket knife. And that all comes back to that massive pivot area housing the Radius lock. It gets in the way of everything else. Everything we're used to at this price point. But in normal EDC use, the ergos are fine. If only a little more limited as far as hand placement as I'm used to and or as I like. Moving on to the action. Well, that all happens at the pivot. There is no flipper tab, no deployment slot or hole, no studs, no nothing. The nature of the Radius lock means that the blade locks open and also locks closed, which means you'll be doing a lot of button pushing if you want to fidget with this piece. To open, you simply push the little jimped button in and wheel it out into the open position, kind of a slow roll. And to close, you simply do the reverse of that. You can, with some practice, do something kind of similar to a thumb flick, but lefties need not apply here, because you are all unfortunately left out, no pun intended. I only bring up lefties because this is the most non-lefty friendly locking mechanism I've ever handled. Now it is running on bearings, so once you disengage the lock to close the knife, it will drop, but I found the satisfaction really comes from the buttery, smooth, slow roll both on the open and on the close. It's a very interesting action, but not one that is devoid of satisfaction. I really did enjoy this piece while I had it, and the action is so different that I find it kind of mesmerizing to some level. It's cool, and that's really all I've got to say about it. And finally, that blade. Now, in the past, I have had my issues with Italian-made knives, mainly Italian-made blades. More specifically, Italian-made blades on Italian-made knives made out of Bowler M390 steel. Because for whatever reason, the Italians, they struggle with the details. Design is where they shine. Science, not so much. Giant Mouse, I mean, need I say more? But I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised when this piece arrived because that 2.95-inch long M390 blade is not only heat-treated to some degree of relative hardness, according to Fox's website, between 59 and 61 HRC, but it was also relatively ground pretty damn well. It did have a very kind of toothy, saw-like factory edge, kind of like what you get off of a Benchmade. But for EDC use, I mean, it works, which is more than I can say for the previous Italian-made knives that I've reviewed. Honestly, it's ground like a hard user, kind of thick behind the edge, but it looks like it wants to be a straight razor. It's not the sliciest blade on the market, but ground to cut, and cut well enough. And made out of steel that is actually harder than recycled aluminum cans. So yeah, there you go. Hope that's helpful. So where does all of this leave me with the Fox Knives Radius? Honestly, as it stands, the Radius lock feels like the star of the show, and everything else here was just an afterthought. It's beautiful, it's surprisingly well made. High-end materials, beautiful decorative patterning and micro-milling on the handles. A stunning blade that kind of actually cuts things decently well. Like, yeah, okay, it's a real pretty knife that kind of works. The Radius lock is fun and interesting to me, and I do hope they do more with it in the future, but all of that stops when we get to the price. $467 US, give or take a few cents, is what you can expect to pay for this. And for me personally, that is not a price I'm willing to pay for this kind of, I don't know, cliche tomfoolery. It's an okay knife, but not one that I can spend hours playing with or using. And for that reason, $467 is too much to ask. I'll take these same materials and equally excellent aesthetics for half the price from China. Please and thank you. There are cheaper versions of this, but those feel overpriced as well, as far as I'm concerned. You know, $300, $350, $400. So yeah. Anyway, until next time, thank you all so much for watching. Bye-bye now.